Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my insane mother-in-law tried to steal my inheritance at my wife's funeral. She insisted that I don't deserve anything. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the relationship story. The title story starts like this. Hey everyone out there, I'm a long-time reader and first-time poster / rambler. I hope that you can bear with me, because this is gonna be a bit of a long story. First, a cast of the story: me, hello, wife, the love of my life who passed away, MIL, my evil mother-in-law that I'm convinced does not have a soul. Even before talking about the events that led to my wife dying, I need to go back to give everybody an idea of how the relationship between my wife and mother-in-law had been during the time I had known both of them. I think strained would be the best way to put it, because they were never exactly cutting each other off. They were both just taking long breaks when my mother-in-law would upset my wife to a breaking point. During the planning stages of the wedding, my mother-in-law went from being in the wedding party to not invited to a regular guest. And this was only within a period of a few months that all of this happened. It was a vicious cycle that the two of them would go around in, and I hated seeing how much it was hurting my wife and how emotionally abusive my mother-in-law was being. Essentially, my mother-in-law would do or say something that caused my wife to not want to speak to her anymore. Then, after giving each other the cold shoulder, my mother-in-law would apologize to her and sweet talk her way back into her life. And when I say apologize, I really mean gaslight. I'm sorry, you think I hurt you. I think you're remembering it wrong. And yes, this continued after we were married, and I told her my opinions on what her mother was doing and how it was hurting her. At the end of the day, I was not gonna force anything, since their relationship was between the two of them. I could only sit and support my wife when they would have problems, as well as trying to get my wife to spend a lot of holidays with my side of the family, where I knew she wouldn't end up being in tears by the end of the day. Because along with gaslighting, mother-in-law somehow turned every compliment into an insult. Oh, I didn't know they made cute dresses in a size that big. Oh, those earrings would look so nice on you if they were gold instead of silver. I just get fired up thinking about the things she used to say to bring my wife down and how angry it made me. Now, to take a very dramatic turn, I need to talk about how my wife died. We had only been married for 6 years. She was an RN, and with her weird shifts, she would sometimes be coming home very late or in the early hours of the morning. Either way, somebody swerved into her lane and smashed into her car. She swerved, but then another car behind her could not brake in time, causing her to get hit again. She had major injuries and did not make it. I was devastated and found myself unable to even breathe without manually thinking about it. We planned a whole life together and were trying to get pregnant and start a family. Instead, I now had to plan a funeral, and I had no idea what I was doing. As the emergency contact though, I was stuck calling everybody else that needed to know that she had died. It was not a long list, since the only close living relative she had was her mother. I'll be honest that I didn't want to call her, because I knew she would make planning the funeral a million times harder than it had to be. But it was her daughter, and I believed, and still do believe, that she had the right to know. She was not a total monster and started getting upset and crying about the fact, agreeing to meet me the next day to talk about funeral arrangements and things like that. I did not get any sleep after the news and just stayed in bed crying until I had to drag myself out and go meet my mother-in-law. She seemed to be doing okay and wanted to get down to things like it was business and not a life lost. Mother-in-law: first things first, I think she should be buried in this cemetery, since it's where all of our family is buried. Me: okay, we didn't have plots or anything, so I'm open to anywhere. Mother-in-law: you know that these things are not cheap, and I won't be the one to just flip the bill. Me: what? I didn't ask you to. I have money, don't worry about that. I just want her to have the best and be able to rest in peace. Mother-in-law: I just don't want people coming and thinking you are cheap and putting her in a crappy casket. She was just so nonchalant about the entire thing, while I was just dying inside. The world was crushing me, and she was just making things worse. And that was not the end, because we got into a fight on where she would be buried without the preferred cemetery. Mother-in-law wanted her to be in a plot that had none available around it, while I planned to find one with another plot I could purchase if I chose later to be buried there myself. It got to the point that I just couldn't handle her, and my own mother had to step in and take over the planning, letting me make choices, and she would just make sure that it all happened. Hell, my own mom was crying and seemed more upset about my wife dying than my mother-in-law did. I'm not gonna lie and say that I even remember the day of the funeral. It was almost like a blur or an out-of-body experience. I was physically there and talking to people and giving a speech, but I felt like I was miles away and just looking in from the outside. It was the only time I ever had that happen and don't have any words for it. What I do remember was after the funeral, mother-in-law started asking me weird questions about my house. The house that we had purchased together and had both of our names on the deed. She was asking specifically about me moving and selling the house. Me, I was not planning on selling the house. Mother-in-law, well, you have to sell it because otherwise I cannot get my half. Me, half of what? Her stuff? You can come by and have some of her things. I was out of it and just not understanding what she was talking about. I assumed she wanted stuff of her daughter. And I was more than happy to share any items that held sentimental value. Mother-in-law, no, why would I want her stuff? I'm talking about half of the house. I'm the beneficiary in her will. Me, I have a copy of her will that we both made a year ago. It says that the spouse gets full ownership of everything. Mother-in-law, nonsense. She made a will when she turned 18 and left everything to me. You cannot just have two wills. Okay, for this point she's not wrong, but not right either. You cannot have two valid wills. When you legally make a second one, your old one is invalidated. Any court in the country will follow the newest version of the will unless there's reason to believe it was signed under duress or when the person was not in a sound state of mind. Something like that. Mother-in-law refused to listen and demanded half the home was hers and I either needed to sell the house or move out and give it to her. I was just done at this point. I was done playing nice. I was done being polite to this horrible woman. I told her to F off. She didn't listen, and this is kind of when the story gets into the second part. When lawyers and legal action had to get involved, I say had to, but really it was only because she made it happen. She threatened to sue me if I did not sell the house and give her half the money or move out. I did not do anything because I knew I was right, but I also just did not have the mental energy to do anything. Mother-in-law had been busy though the next couple days filing a claim of inheritance with the county, using what I assumed was the old will somehow. I now got a lawyer because I was a little worried at this point that she was gonna get my house. He sent her a cease and desist letter making it very public knowledge to the county that the house was left to me in a more recent will. Great, so now the county knew it was my house and everything was great, right? Well, no, because mother-in-law was too entitled of a person to just let it go and instead decided to take things to a very illegal level. She filed new documents with the county that showed that she was the owner of the house. The documents being two things in particular. Number one, her old will that now suddenly and magically had a new date on it. Number two, papers showing that my wife signed over the property to mother-in-law before she died. Both of these things being extremely fake and clearly forged to anybody that knew her. Still, to deal with a case of a document being forged, an actual case had to be filed against her for it. With me claiming it was fake and my lawyer pushing the DA to investigate the matter. They did and agreed that the documents seemed tampered with. She was arrested on those charges and decided that she wanted to go ahead and plead not guilty, thinking that she could somehow still get away with just whining and being able to take my house away from me. Which, by the way, in the meantime of all this, she was not just sitting and waiting, she was still calling and texting me about leaving the house as well as calling real estate agencies to come and get an estimate. She was even hiring them in one case to sell my house. I had these people coming over to try and get in my house to look at it and me needing to kick them out. With some not even wanting to leave easily because mother-in-law claimed that I was just a squatter living there and had no rights to the home. It was so stressful and I was on edge, worried about people showing up to my house and trying to move in or something. I realize now that some might think her getting arrested just for the suspicion was not very strong and couldn't hold up. Well, what I found out weeks later, but will tell you now, is that she apparently had a criminal history. A history that was directly related to a previous conviction for forgery in order to attain property. She actually was a criminal this entire time and I never knew about it before. I don't know if my wife was also unaware or just felt like it was not an important thing for me to know. Since she pleaded not guilty, the entire thing is going to trial, but I'm still a bit nervous about everything. I've never been part of something like this and don't know how to act outside of TV shows. I also left things vague since this is still ongoing and I don't want to mess up the trial in a few days by posting something and dropping names or locations or anything. If people want, I can give an update after the trial and what is going to end up happening to my mother-in-law and my house. And now we got an update to the story. It reads like this. Wow, I did not expect people to actually read through that entire thing and want more. Also, I want to thank everybody for their condolences regarding my wife. It means a lot to feel like people out there in the universe care and understand what I'm going through. And for the people who are more versed in psychology telling me that the out-of-body thing I felt was normal after a loss. Okay, so I'm updating because the trial and everything finished yesterday and I have a lot of news regarding mother-in-law. First thing being that going to court was not as scary as I assumed it was gonna be, mainly because I got to see mother-in-law in a state where she couldn't just talk as she wanted and insult people or gaslight her way out of situations. They also brought in a forensic expert that specialized in handwriting. They took the documents mother-in-law had and my documents and compared them against something else that was already confirmed to have been written by my wife. Things she had written at the hospital where only she could have actually done it. He was asked a ton of questions and pointed out these very specific things about handwriting that told him how he would know if it was hers or not. The biggest thing being something that I didn't even realize was a thing. My wife was left-handed and it turns out that an expert can tell just by looking at something if the person was left or right-handed. The notes she had from work, left-handed. The signature on my copy of the will and deed, left-handed. The stuff that my mother-in-law was claiming to be legit, right-handed. It was not looking good for mother-in-law, but she was still trying to claim that the house belonged to her. That as the mother, she had a right to a certain percentage of her daughter's assets by default, which is just not a law. And I don't think it has ever been a law, at least in this county. Finally, what I learned was that even within a certain crime, there are severities, and forging a will and deed are pretty high on that severity list when it comes to forgery. She was found guilty by the jury, and because of what she forged and her past conviction, clearly not giving her enough of a message, she was given 5 years in prison. That last part was during the sentencing hearing about 2 days ago, and I've just been in so much shock since then. I can now change the deed to be solely in my name to avoid anything else she might want to start with once she gets out. It just feels weird, like an entire family line just ended. Well, I know she is still alive, but just in prison, and it feels a little similar to me. Anyway, she is gone. Update number 2, I've been still getting a lot of questions that I want to clear up. The first being people asking why my wife even had a will when she was 18 years old in the first place, and that reason pretty much relates to her job. When she got into being a nursing student, she learned the hard way that people can die young with no warning. She wanted to have a will in case she was ever in an emergency like that, and then after being married and having more assets, she wanted to get an updated one as well as have me get one too. It was that forward thinking that is one of the big reasons I fell in love with her so hard. The other big questions people are asking is why I don't have a restraining order against mother-in-law. Well, that also has a pretty simple answer in the fact that having one right now would not be of any use. Those things usually expire after a few years and she would still be in prison. No judge would give me a restraining order that has no purpose right now. So if she tries to contact me after she gets out of prison, then I would consider getting one. And here, Ripe Stars, rest in peace. I'm so sorry for OP about what happened to his wife, but I do hope that this stupid mother-in-law will never bother him again. Either way, if you like these relationship stories, then please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you wish to support me. Thank you so much, and the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. I, 23 male, was repeatedly stuck playing the part of helper and babysitter on family outings. I had to move out of my parents' house because I kept being forced to help watch my 3 nephews. Last year we took a family vacation in summer to the coast. I rode along with my parents and they paid for my hotel room. Well, only I had to share that room with 3 rowdy boys because my sister and her husband wanted a room to themselves. I was promised time to do my own things on the vacation. But instead, I ended up having to help with these kids. I complained to everyone about it and was reminded that I was there for free. And then we pretty much just did only one thing I wanted to do, which was tour an art gallery. I like doing this whenever I'm at the coast, but the kids find it boring. This year, my parents have a beach trip planned for June, and they assumed that I'd be riding along the same way as last year, but I refused. I said I'd be driving myself and paying for my own hotel stay to have my own room. My parents were shocked and tried to remind me of the cost. I said it was no worry. I've got a good job and decent running car. I can more than afford it. That's when the buts started. I stated the previously listed things as why I'll be driving myself and paying for myself. I want to be able to enjoy this vacation as an adult and not be treated like a child like last year. My parents told my sister and she called to blow up at me that I'll be ruining the vacation if I'm off doing my own thing while she has to wrangle her 3 boys. I ended up yelling at her that last year all she did was rope me into her mess. I did not really get to do much of anything I wanted to do, and I was treated like the bad guy for wanting to just go to an art gallery. I'm a grown man, I deserve my own vacation too. Now my sister is not speaking to me and my parents are still trying to convince me to just ride with them to keep the peace. I'm still refusing, but the pressure is getting to me. Am I the a-hole for not giving in? I know they will have a pretty hard time when they won't have another person there to help. Edit: it's barely been an hour since I posted, but my sister is apparently a Reddit lurker in the morning and she saw my post. Not only is she furious with me, she is also upset that no one in the comments is siding with her. To make it short, she went on a big rant about how it's so hard to be a parent to triplets and the least I could do is help because I am young and single and she needs a break. I stood my ground on my decision and now she is calling our parents to get them involved. I'm expecting a call from them any minute. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know if you think OP is the a-hole or not here. However, to be honest, I don't know any universe where OP could be the a-hole. Comment number 1 said, not the a-hole, your sister can pay a babysitter to come on the vacation if she doesn't want to deal with her 3 children. Personally, I would not even go because even in a separate hotel room, they are not gonna leave you alone about this. They feel very entitled for your babysitting services. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, it is 4 persons for 3 boys. If they need more help, they can hire a nanny. Plus, claps to your sister, she trapped you in free babysitting by making your parents pay your room. Wow, the entitlement is real. Update: well, I'm off work now, so I can tell more of what went down. I guess you could say it's over. My sister got our parents involved, they looked at my post and were absolutely horrified by the continuous influx of commenters. Yes, they are very angry with me that I posted here, but I told them that if they had just listened to me to begin with, I would have never needed to do this. I'm sick of the whole keep the peace mentality that sacrifices me to placate my sister. They in turn went off on my sister, and to make a long story short, the whole vacation has been cancelled. The hotel was not booked yet anyway, but my parents are arguing with my sister and my sister is blaming me and my nephews are crying because they are not going to the beach. My sister called me at lunch and basically implied that I have no life, which is why I have time to help. I recorded that and told our parents, and that's currently what they are fighting about. Small update, I was not gonna update again, but here's a little more. My parents said that they won't ever push babysitting of my nephews on me again and have agreed that what happened last year was unfair to me. Right now they are very angry with my sister for telling me I should help her because she thinks I have no life. My sister is playing the victim and my brother-in-law is basically saying nope to the whole mess and spending most of his time at work. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say that's a positive outcome for OP and the parents finally noticed what is going on. Props to OP for standing up for himself and not letting his sister exploit him. And the next one is titled Glorious Revenge. Let me introduce you to my friends. So, my family owns a small water store in the middle of a tiny strip mall in our town. Back in the beginning of the water store's life, 5 years into owning, we had an interesting visitor. In 2009, a man claiming that he was the first marshal, and he was doing inspections for the area. He forcefully walked through our building without authority, paperwork or such, claiming a half-dozen infractions. Keep in mind, he had a badge, he had business cards, he had quite the gruff exterior. He was a bit muscular and had this in-control attitude. He then wrote the bill-ups of what needed to be done, and the man moved on and we reacted with a bad scare as we thought how to fix all of this. We of course checked with our insurance, but conveniently, a fire safety company whom provides fire extinguisher services, fire alarms, etc. on the same day walked in and asked if their services were needed. He said he saw the fire marshal and thought that we odds are had a list of infractions on us. Should have seen this one coming. So the fire company reprehensively starts writing an estimate while looking over the list the fire marshal gave us. We got suspicious. Keep in mind, we are a young business, slow on the uptake. We had a hunch. Why? Well, every business was inspected in our little strip mall and the timing between the two events. How often do you get an inspection and then someone with an answer? So my dad and I are beginning to feel it's a scam. We decide to investigate. It turns out, after calling the local fire authority and fire department, they confirmed that both these guys were fakes. A fake fire marshal and a fake company were scamming people in the area. So over a weekend we contacted the appropriate companies and repaired what was needed and recharged our fire extinguisher with no issues. Our landlord was happy to help and we then waited for the guy to try to pressure us again. When he showed up again, we showed him how we had fixed it all and he walked out in pain. But let's jump ahead 2 years. Now, my dad is a friendly sort. He loves shaking hands and meeting people. He made friends with the local fire marshal and the fire chief. They are both regulars at our water store, so the fake fire marshal came back. He said he was doing a surprise inspection again and was gonna walk around. He then enters into our shop and he makes some notes. He then walks to the cross-section, and this is a key element. So one door leads to a bathroom and one door goes to our storage, one door goes to our neighbor's place. There are several fire escape plans posted, including on that door and around the facility. He goes into the storage room to count violations. What he didn't count on was, as he was doing this inspection, the real fire marshal and chief of the local fire department walked in, both in civil, out of uniform. Both are now retired but still get water from us, and we got to know the new ones too. They were getting water from our store. They were filling and talking, and I told them both to keep quiet for a moment. I told them what was going on. One of them steps out and calls the police. He then returns and we wait. As the fake fire marshal walks in with his list of infractions, I prepare something for him. I close our front door and show him a pair of fire extinguishers he forgot to inspect. He then checks them. I pretend to resume the conversation and end with a joke and start lightly chatting it up with my 2 friends/customers, and I ask the fake fire marshal, "Hey, faker, have you met gentlemen 1 and 2? Keep in mind I introduced them as normal people. Faker, "No, I haven't." He shakes their hands. Me, "Well, funny story. See, the reason is, I'm laughing, they work in the same line as you." Faker, "Oh yeah." Me, "Yeah, they introduce themselves and shake hands saying it's an honor to meet another local hero." Me, "Funny thing is, I would think you would know them." This time I introduced them for real. They show their badges and real cards and I stand with a smug grin. The fake fire marshal steps back into our counter. He is chuckling on and realizes the jig is up. He's trying to explain things and making excuses. Suffice to say, he ran for the cross-section but I guess missed the turn because he ran into a dead-end storage room. So we wait for the police and he is arrested. As he's being taken away, he is screaming that these guys are the fakers, that he is in the right. Some days later, the fire safety company guy is arrested too. It turns out the guy was related to him and the two had been running this scam up and down the entire coast. I hope this one made you smile. And yeah, Ripe stars, keep that in mind. If you're running such a dumb scam, always double down and pretend that the real fire marshals are actually the fake ones. I gotta say, that was my favorite part of the story. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.